Welcome to A Walk in the Park with Gil, where every other week I invite fascinating people to talk about cities. Sometimes it's about parks, others about walking, riding bicycles, using public transit, or children and elders in cities, public health, the environment, and much more. My name is Gil Penalosa, and I was born in Bogota, Colombia, where as commissioner, I led the design and construction of over 200 parks and took a small program of open streets called Ciclovia and turned it into the world's largest pop-up park with 121 kilometers, 76 miles of car-free streets where people of all ages and backgrounds enjoy the presence of each other as equals. 17 years ago, I created 880 Cities, a non-profit organization based in Toronto, Canada, where I live. Before the pandemic, I had worked in 345 cities in all continents, which is why my master classes now are called Gil in 345 Cities. This bi-weekly webinar is a way of giving back, always free. Invite anyone who cares about cities and people to join us. Your comments and suggestions are always welcome. Okay, so I want to acknowledge that the land we're meeting in is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and is now home of many diverse First Nations, the Inuit, the Métis, and people from many other nations. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. And now we have David Sim. David, thank you very much for having accepted to be part of the conversation. Welcome.
Hi, Gil. Hi, that's great to be here. Bonjour, hi to Canada. It's always a pleasure from Scandinavia to connect to Canada. We like to think that kind of Canada's kind of like the Scandinavia of the Americas. You know, not just the climate, but you guys, you know, all of us, of course, often on the forefront of being progressive and doing things a different way. And of course, I know there's an even bigger public, so thank you everybody who's joined. Gil, this is an amazing platform you've created. I just want to, okay, I guess I'm kind of went to the Gil School of Communication, so I will try and say as much as possible in short time as possible. I really love this opportunity to share and also to have so many like-minded people that care signing in this kind of event. Originally, I'm Scottish.
Yeah, so David, I didn't introduce you properly. Please introduce yourself. Okay. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Okay. I've been a really good friend of David for many, many years, and we have worked in many cities around the world. But I said, David, people are here is to listen to you, not to me. I love your book. Your book is in so many languages, and you were so kind that I read it initially in English. You sent me a copy in Spanish. Wonderful. But now I turn it up to you, please.
Okay, thank you. So very briefly, okay, but my name is David Sim. I'm originally from Scotland, so that's also another Canadian connection, of course. And I've stayed in the north of Europe. I have been living between Denmark and Sweden. I did part of my studies. I'm an architect, studying first in Edinburgh, but later in Lund in Sweden, and then in Copenhagen. I got to know Jan Gehl, the famous, like the godfather, you could say, of humanistic planning. I was his pupil. I was a student first in Scotland, then in Copenhagen, then ended up working with Jan for many, many years at Gehl Architects and along with Gil on many, many projects. I live now in Sweden, and I guess I thought we'd start because it's kind of like for many, like since the pandemic, my home has kind of become my office, and kind of like it's my world has shrunk. I mean, Gil said, you know, I was traveling all over the world. I think since the pandemic, my world has shrunk a lot. You know, I mean, I used to be at the airport every week. Now I think I've been at the airport once this year. But I thought I'll show you around. I'll take you around the house. It's a beautiful day here in Lund in Sweden. I live in a funny little townhouse, but just to get you a sense of what it's like. So on the front of my house, it goes out onto the main street in Lund. So we can see, maybe if we're lucky, we might see a cyclist. You know, so this is just like the main street of my little hometown. So just kind of like, you know, there's a street, shops, people on bicycles, people waiting for the bus. But on the back of my house, used to go like, I guess 10 meters, 30 feet. And at the back is kind of like, it's the quiet side, it's the yard, the patio, there's the washing hanging, and it's a completely different soundscape. You can hear it's quieter. You can hear the birds singing, and that's just like kind of how you can live like in an urban environment with the benefits of the bus stop and the bakery, but but at the same time, that quiet backside having a garden where you can sunbathe or just hang your washing. And of course, that maybe sounds a little bit banal. I was talking to Gil in the warm-up, a lot of the stuff we talk about is everyday stuff. And you say, well, but urbanism, architecture, it should be exciting. It should be, like knock people over. But I think what really is important is to get that base of everyday life right. So I guess I'll start my presentation. And I'd like to tell you just a little bit about this idea of soft city and how that what that does for our everyday life. And I'll just link into the presentation. And of course, this is always the nervousy part. We'll just get this working. And are we good? Have we got that up there?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So I'm here to talk about the book. I actually worked for 17 years at Gale Architects with projects all over the world. And during that time, I wrote this book, Soft City, which has now appeared in many languages. And I think maybe the success of the book came from us talked about really simple everyday things. So what do we mean, by soft? And I guess the walk in the park, that's a soft thing. This is a picture from Stockholm. And there's so much research about people and nature. And this is just kind of like, this is in this park in Stockholm, in the center of Stockholm, where they've deliberately made the noise of the water louder and the noise of the trees is amplified to make people calm down, because there's so much research that contact with the forces of nature makes us better. And the background I come from at Gale is one where we look at research, we understand what really works, things that work, and try to implement them. Because we know, and if we can actually know much more than just creating places which look good, pretty places, but places which really give people better quality of life. And there's so many stories. I mean, there's Swedish research, that if you can see a tree from your hospital bed, you'll get better faster than if there are no trees. And that's amazing because planting trees is almost free, and having people in hospital is one of the most expensive things in society. So that's the kind of the way we think. So let's get started. And what do we mean by soft? Because I guess many people think, well, city, that's a hard thing. It's asphalt, it's concrete, it's metal, it's glass. The city's a hard thing. And that's true, that many of the materials of the city are hard. But of course, there are things which are soft, and most of all, it's the people. And this is one of my favorite pictures I usually show when I do a presentation. This is in Malmö in Sweden on the waterfront. And who would believe that the Swedes, those cold Lutherans in the north of Europe, would dance tango? But if you get the atmosphere right, people do surprisingly different things. And you can see people are still got their winter clothes on. It's a spring evening, but people are out there in the public space spending time together. And this is a newly built area, very much human scale. It's dense, but kind of like dense in a very human scale way, with the streets, courtyards, patios, 4, 5, 6 stories outside, 3 stories in the middle. And actually what surprises you is actually the smallness of this place. And you notice here, this is a little square, a little plaza, but it's maybe the size of somebody's apartment or somebody's garden. It doesn't need to be big. And in fact, if it's big, and especially if you have this kind of eye-level view, it's good that it's small, because the mom, when she's looking out of her door, she can see her kids playing and she's in control. She can see what's going on. And if there are some strangers passing by, she can say, hi, how are you doing? Because she feels in control. There's a scale which she feels comfortable, and her kids can be outside. And this is kind of where neighborhood starts happening. And then if there's this trust that if you're not worried, like, oh, my kids are going to be run over, my kids are going to be kidnapped, you can extend the boundaries. And so here, the kids are selling coffee and juice and cookies to visiting tourists on the waterfront in Malmö. Sorry about that, but that I live near the hospital here in Sweden, so that was the ambulance, it's not the police. But it's, you can see here that the kids are out there. There's no traffic, so it's safe for them to go out to play. And because there are so many windows looking down, there are many eyes on the street. And that means that it's a safe place for kids to grow up, but also in a way that they can connect with strangers and have little adventures. So it's a very dynamic place to grow up too. And I guess there's something even I would call the vacation feeling or the holiday feeling, because for an everyday family, you know, it's like your vacations that 1 or 2 weeks a year, you get to kind of relax and have this feeling of just, you know, letting go. But imagine if you could have that vacation feeling every day of the year. On a Tuesday night, you could buy some pizza, you know, and bring you can see the tray with the glasses. These people have walked from their apartment down to the waterfront, and they're having this kind of like night out. They're having a cheap night out with the family, you know, and it's costs almost nothing. But what a fantastic thing for a family that they can get this vacation feeling in everyday life. And I guess because they're Swedes, they're Vikings, they couldn't resist jumping into the water, you know, and if you can jump into the lake in the countryside, why can't you jump into the sea in the port? And this was never planned, but, you know, in the project, they made these little floating platforms. You know, they bought a little ladder for $200, and suddenly the water became accessible. But that completely changed the atmosphere, because suddenly people could, you know, walk around the neighborhood. They could go swimming every day, and it's very soft. If you meet your neighborhood in their bathing coat, in their bathing robe, you know, saying hi. And it's even more soft when they go for a swim, that they leave the door open, and it's as if they lived in a village in the countryside. You know, they leave their back door open because the cat goes inside and out, and all the neighbors are there, so they feel a sense of trust. And this isn't a city. Imagine if you could have this kind of feeling of trust and ease in your everyday life. And that's why I often say neighborhood is not just a place, it's a state of mind, it's a way of being. Now, some of you are thinking, how very chic, how very cute. You know, you're talking about Swedes going swimming, Swedes going dancing. And, you know, I mean, don't you know that we've got all of this serious stuff to deal with? And, you know, we've got Greta, we are constantly being reminded. We're experiencing also, you know, some of the effects of climate change. You can hear here, this is the Google search for flooding. Copenhagen has been having some terrible flooding. But we're also seeing a crisis in terms of disease. And I'm not talking about the pandemic of COVID, but the pandemic of lifestyle-related diseases, obesity, heart disease, diabetes. These are killing many, many more people than COVID. And at the same time, we have a pandemic of loneliness. And this is so ironic, with more people than ever living in the city, that there are so many lonely people, you know, in our society. And of course, with depression and drugs and taking different medications. We see also a pandemic of inequity with protests, and I think maybe the COVID pandemic has exposed so many of the weaknesses in society. And then, of course, everybody is stuck in traffic. And then we're told that, you know, and so in all of this, you know, how can I talk about, you know, the soft cities, you know, but maybe this way of building the city can be the beginning of a solution. And again, if we look at this picture from Malmo, and we put our kind of like anthropological glasses on, what do we see? Well, actually, in this space, we see people walking, people spending time outdoors. We can, you know, so you could say, actually, this is a picture of public health. This is public health happening. We see also if the different people, we see, well, actually, there are different ethnicities. You know, there are groups of people, there are couples, there are singles, there are old people, there are young people, the people in wheelchairs. And actually, this is also a picture of democracy, because when people can share the same public space, then you can really start to build maybe a better society. And I think what's great about the city is the way that it enables these relationships to happen. And here's a picture from Mexico, just, you know, recognizing, you know, this thing like you can connect inside, outside, you connect with the planet, you know, on the street, the plaza, you connect with place, and the fact at eye level, you connect with other people. And I think we can look for these little moments of softness when there are small steps which allow you to connect to people, planet, and place. And it can be a little thing. It could be the vegetable store with a stool outside and a bike parked. You know, this guy in Mexico City, he's got one of the best workplaces imaginable. He's a tailor. He's on the street. He's meeting people going by. You know, he's feeling the sun on his skin. You know, that little opening, that window in Barcelona where you can say hi when you buy bread. Or this one is a former bank in Sao Paulo, Brazil, one of the most dangerous cities in the world, completely changing the environment by having a dance class in this former bank. It's just a window, but you see into this event, you can hear the music, you can watch. It's even an invitation to join in. You think, hey, maybe I could do that. I could join in. I could do that. I could dance with her. I could dance with him. You know, it's just a window, a little place. Now, you'll know this in Canada, in the beginning, end of the year, the value of capturing that little moment of sunshine, you know, or even, you know, these guys playing chess in Switzerland. Maybe this is not the most exciting, vibrant piece of city life imaginable. For these old guys, who this is their only social contact during the day, that they can go and legitimately have an excuse to stand in a public space, and maybe a legitimate excuse to start a conversation with a stranger, because it's just a chess game. And here you can see two people playing chess, maybe 20 or 30 people watching. And it's a very simple thing, which is, you know, obviously, you know, this is inviting people to take part. And again, this is where we touch on public health. And I'm delighted that there's so many public health people who are interested in taking part in this series with Gil, because, you know, you can ask, we can always laugh at the way people try to stay fit. You know, here when they drive to the fitness center, take the escalator up, and it's so ironic because inside, you know, they're doing stepping and spinning and doing the treadmill. But of course, we need exercise. And you can ask a district nurse or a surgeon, what's the foundation of public life? And they'll say the same thing. They'll say fresh air, exercise, meet people. You know, just get outside. You don't need to play basketball, just walk. You know, and you don't need to go to a party, just be in the company of other human beings. And we can look at all of those little nudges we get. Here's a store in Tokyo where you're reminded, like, every step on the staircase counts. You know, and here's the BBC, walking would save thousands of lives in the UK. Here's another one, walking cuts breast cancer risk. So, you know, you say, this is not just a cute little thing about, oh, let's make prettier cities. This is really understanding the relevance of everything we're doing. And I mean, especially in Gil's movement, this is really at the core of health and well-being in our societies. Here's another one here. This was just this week in The Guardian in the UK. This is about Alzheimer. You know, one of the big threats society, one of our biggest problems to deal with. Socialization is the most important part of keeping away Alzheimer and dementia and keeping your memory. And how do we make a society, how do we make cities, towns and suburbs where socialization is possible? You know, here, this is Paris Plage, where they've closed some of the highways in the summer to make more public space. So how can we make this city which is good for people? So that was a long introduction. How am I doing? Maybe another 15 minutes to quickly go through these 3 ways we can live together in the city. One is about living locally. Yeah, okay, so three themes, and these are the 3 big chapters of the book. Living locally, and I guess since COVID, suddenly, like, our neighborhood life, living locally became so much more relevant. All of the things that you find in your neighborhood. And for me, there's a kind of an equation. We need density and diversity to make proximity. Because density is like, you can build towers, 30, 40 stories. But if you don't have diversity, you're not actually close to anything useful. So the big thing, and as we think about how to make our cities, how can we be close to the park? How can we be close to the store? How can we be close to the pharmacy? How can I be closer to my neighbors, or, you know, how can I be close to other kids for my kids to play with? So we need to find forms to accommodate many different things, different kinds of people, different activity in the same place. And luckily, you know, we've been building cities for thousands of years, and there are really good examples of how to build in a diverse way so we can accommodate the busy things, the noisy things, the bus stop and the bakery and the pharmacy, but the quiet stuff, where you can, sleep with an open window, and your kids can play safely. And some simple things. One of the simplest things I've learned is enclosure. The idea of building a block which actually encloses. And you could say it's a mini gated community. It's a safe, tranquil, quiet, clean space in the middle of the city. And what Copenhagen discovered was, rather than parking cars here and having the dumpster here, let's make this a green space, a green oasis. It's quieter, because it's a big wall around it. It's got cleaner air. And actually, what a great place for your kids to play. And actually, when you're living in your apartment, your kids can run downstairs, and in 45 seconds, they can be out there in a big backyard, a much bigger backyard than you'd ever get in the city. But also, it's not just your mom or one dad, there are 100 moms and dads watching their kids play. So it's a safe environment for your kids to play. There's no traffic, the air is clean. It may take more than 45 seconds to get them back in again when dinner's ready. But it's as simple as this. And this big backyard in the middle of the city. And of course, it creates the courtyard, the patio creates a microclimate. It's always a little bit cooler in the summer. It's always a few degrees warmer in the winter. And this is very important, because for air conditioning and heating, which is with climate change and also with the issues of energy shortages, certainly in Europe, every degree difference we can improve our climate naturally, the better. And of course, you have natural ventilation, sleeping with an open window. In the summer, things grow better because it's a better microclimate. It's nicer to be outside, and we can lengthen the season for being outside. Imagine if the Canadian summer was longer. We can make the season longer by working with enclosure. And of course, it's a protected acoustic space, so it's quiet. It's clean, so you can hang your washing out. And of course, it's a common space. It gives you common identity. And it's a great place to get to know your neighbors, because you've got this place in common, even the ones who've got an address on the other street, on the other side of the block, and a place to encounter. And this is, again, these incremental steps of neighborhood. This is where it starts. Another simple solution, which we know from old cities, is layering. And just reckon, rather than stacking like pancakes, but just to recognize, well, actually the ground floor is different, and the middle is different, and the top is different. Every top floor can be a penthouse. Every ground floor can be something special. And we can make the most of what every floor does. And in this way, we can also have diversity super locally. Every building can contain diversity. And so just thinking like on the ground floor, we can have useful things at eye level. It can be shops and stores, but it can also be workspaces. It can be institutions like kindergartens. It can be the doctor, it can be the surgery, the dentist, and it can even be homes. Now, for a long time in cities, we said, well, nobody wants to live on the ground floor. You live on the ground floor, people are going to see in. But we discovered by making a little soft buffer zone, a little garden, a little edge zone, that ground floor on your own front door, and actually the ground floor can be like having your own house. You have your own front door, your own mailbox. Your kids can run in and out, your dog can come in and out. If you're older, it's great for older people to connect. And we've seen a huge renaissance in the ground floor, that people want to live on the ground floor because it's like living in a house. And what we're discovering actually in Scandinavia, now people will pay 25% extra to live on the ground floor. And it's a simple thing of just recognizing having a front door, having a 2 or 3 meter space, 10 feet, 6 feet, to have a space that you can use for your home. It's about density at a human scale. The next big theme, it's about people, and it's getting about, but also getting on. It's about society. Everybody's talking about the 15-minute city. But what is the 15-minute city? 15 minutes is quite a long time. I think we need to think about 5 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes. We have to think about time. And there is nothing more democratic than time. Everybody, no matter how well educated you are, how rich you are, you've only got 24 hours. And if you're lucky, you get 8 hours sleep. If you're lucky, you only work 8 hours. And then what's left? You've got your chores, there's the travel, your commuting time, picking up the kids, and all of that transportation time, how much of this golden time is left? You know, the time where you can read poetry, be with your lover, be with your kids, read stories to your children, to go to ceramics classes. How much of your time is left? And that's why if we can improve the travel time, if we can reduce that communication time, we can give you more time to you. And that's why every second counts. And every time I see somebody running, you know, jumping the red light or crossing the street at the red man, is because time is precious. And we have to think about how everything connects. And sometimes it can be really simple. This is a picture from Copenhagen. And for me, this is how fabulous urban planning can be. And you're thinking, hey, what's he talking about? This is a picture of a time machine. And you're saying, hey, what's he talking about? It's a sidewalk. Here in Copenhagen, the sidewalk continues across the main street, the side street. So you can see there's the side street, you see the car on the left. The sidewalk continues. That means that as a pedestrian, you have the right to keep on walking. You don't need to stop. So your 5-minute walk becomes a 3-minute walk, because you can walk. So you can walk quicker. If your kid can walk to school on their own, because they can go 12 blocks without crossing the street, they can be independent. You don't need to take them to school. That maybe gives you an hour extra every day. What a gift, an extra hour every day. So the idea that the town, you know, just giving you, it's so simple. It's this, the sidewalk surface continues across the side street. You know, there's no app. You know, even the guy who's come from the countryside, he's never seen this before, instinctively understands how this works. You know, and you wait for the people, then you drive. It's simple as that. And these simple solutions here in Copenhagen, on the sunny side of the street, they've made a wider sidewalk because it's sunny. People can park in the shade. Again, it's so simple. Make space. We know where the sun shines, and we know people will like to spend time outdoors. Make a wider side stalk on the sunny side street. And again, cycling, and I guess you've heard about cycling, but Copenhagen, everybody cycles. Grandma, grandpa, 8-year-old kid, the scary guy with sunglasses, everybody cycles. And they do that because it's easy and you're connected. It's easy to cycle. You know, you can stop, and because you're cycling, you're at grade, you're in the same airspace, you hear, you smell, you drive past the bakery, you can stop your bike, you can buy bread. And in this way, we start connecting that, hey, this is not just about the convenience of picking up bread. Cycling is directly connected to commerce. And every city we've studied, whether it's Edinburgh, Copenhagen, Melbourne, London, we know that cyclists spend more than people in cars. And that's just because they're in the same airspace. They can stop. It takes them 3 seconds to stop. 15 seconds, they're inside the bakery buying bread. And again, this is the time of your life and how it connects to the commerce of the city. And everything fits together. And everything we talk about in the city is kind of like an ecosystem. So walking and cycling and shopkeeping, it's all part of the same system, and it all fits together. And in Copenhagen, they cycle in the summer, but you know, they even cycle in the winter. 70% cycle in the winter because it's still the most convenient way to get around. And in the same way, traveling through the city at eye level, Toronto has trams. You know, Gail will tell you all about the amazing work in Bogota with Transmilenio. Traveling in buses and trams are great because you're at eye level, you're connected, you're safe, you wait for, you know, you're on the street, you bring life to the street, to the stores. You can, you know, be drinking your coffee, your beer while you're waiting for the bus. It's easy to get on and off because you're not going up and down stairs. It's a convenient place to wait. This is cross culture. This is Switzerland. This is Japan. And as you move through the city at eye level, you're connected with society. You see what's going on. You know, you see the changing weather. You see if there's a sale on at your favorite store. You see your friend. You know, you can even see that yellow pants are fashionable. You know, so you're connected with everything. And the tram or the bus is also a public space. And it's a place where you can potentially encounter other people different from you. You know, and so everybody's talking about TOD, transport-oriented development. And the problem with this, we build a tower next to a metro station or a bus stop. This connects you really well to somewhere else. And what I think is exciting is the idea that we can actually make neighborhood-oriented transit. We connect you to where you are. The journey starts at your window. It takes you down the staircase to your front door. It takes you to the street, to the corner store, to the bus stop. And this is where transportation is really interesting. It's not just about building a really expensive metro system. It's about thinking of the human scale, how your window connects to the street, and that takes you into the city, to the bike lane, to the sidewalk or the bus stop. Okay, final subject is about climate change, living with the weather. It's about connecting to the planet. I think we talk about climate change, it's a really heavy subject, but I guess everybody knows what the weather's like. And again, especially in Canada, when you've got amazing seasonal change, you're really aware of the weather. But can we, how can we think about how we create our own weather? That the shape of the buildings, and especially when you think of this low, cozy scale, we create protection, the shadows are not too long, how this microclimate allows things to happen. Here's a picture from Sweden, again, it's Malmö, and there's the people, it's the beginning, it's maybe late February, March, and it's still really cold, but this couple, they've opened their jackets because there's a microclimate. The wall is a stone wall. The stone wall creates a microclimate, which creates a different climate. The wall transports these people in Sweden right down to the north of France because it's created a different climate. Here's one in Scotland. It's a little sunny corner outside the pub. And in February, you can sit outside in the sunshine. It's a little climatic pocket. This is the edge of the cathedral in Lund in Sweden, where I live. And you can see that sunny edge of the church. Sitting along that edge, it warms up. You can lean on the stone because it's warmed up all day. And even you can see that they're wearing their jackets. This is not, you can sit outside. You can enjoy the sunshine. You can enjoy being outdoors, even if you live in a cold country. And here they've added little stools to make make it even more easy to inhabit. So you can sit down in a group. You can have your lunch. You can sit with your friends. It's a wall. It's a stool. It's really, really simple things. And how something so simple can bring life and quality of life to public spaces. This is another one from Lund. And they've kind of got the hang of it now in the microclimate. In the medieval center, the main square naturally catches the sun. And in the city, they thought, oh, this is cool. And they put sun loungers, like chaise longues, in the sunny corner of the main square, so people can sunbathe. But the really cool thing is, even in winter, when there's snow on the ground, the microclimate is still good enough that they can sit outside and enjoy the sun, even when it's -8 or -10 or -15. And again, this is the magic, and this is like building our own weather. And this is just like simple old knowledge. We know how the trees can protect us from the shade here in Boston, here in Dusseldorf. It's a tree. It's a tree, but there's 10 degrees difference between standing in the sun and being underneath the tree. The old arcade in Bern in Switzerland, or even just the parasol, how these very simple things allow us to be outside in the very hot weather. And we can talk about nanoclimate, all those little tweaks we can do, which we can make it bearable, and we can live without air conditioning in the summer, without heating in the winter. One of the simplest changes you can make, and I think the balcony, sticking a balcony on an old building. I don't know if there was any positive moment, but during the pandemic, I think one of the few moments of happiness we saw was in Italy, one of the worst affected places by COVID. But we saw people in Italy on the balcony having concerts, having parties. The balcony was a savior. Even if you're in a tiny little city apartment, the balcony gives you breathing space. It allows you to connect with your surroundings. You have like a mini garden. You can connect with your neighbors, and especially up to 3, 4, maybe 5 stories, you can speak to people on the street. You can recognize them. You can say, hi, come on up, see you soon. You can have that kind of connectivity at this human scale. And I guess these little things, balconies, arcades, a little edge zone, a bay window, a French window, these are really simple things we can do, which make the quality of life so much better. Old balconies stuck onto an old building. Shutters. This is something we can learn from the Mediterranean, where it's been hot. As climate change, global warming increases, having shutters as an easy way to deal with the heat. And here's a super flexible one. This is in Lyon, France. It's a combination of louvers. So you've got like 4 seasons. You've got winter completely closed, summer completely open, spring and autumn. You can do variations of adjusting this facade. There's no technology here. There's no app. It's just a simple edge zone with louvers and shutters that you can work by hand. And these simple things we can do, plants, we can cool down our buildings with plants. And what a joy to live in the middle of the city, surrounded by all of this greenery. And finally, here's something from a very hot place, from Brisbane in Australia, where they've created a shopping environment where there's no air conditioning, the streets are outside, but working with simple shading, with trees, with shading, with pillars and overhangs. They've created this outdoor environment which is bearable to be outside. And of course, not only is this a delight to be outside in the fresh air, it's healthier breathing the fresh air. It's of course saves so much energy, which they might otherwise spend on air conditioning. And finally, the climate habitation. I said at the very beginning of the presentation about the flooding we're seeing in Copenhagen and how to deal with that. And Copenhagen was faced with a crisis. Do they spend billions, literally billions and billions of kroner building infrastructure under the big concrete pipes that they would use 2 or 3 days a year? So instead, because they were faced with this huge challenge that actually there's something they can do which is cheaper, and they created floodable public space. So green spaces which had the capacity to contain the water and allow it to filter slowly. And because this was a kind of a crisis package, they could take away hard surfaces like car parks and make new parks. And they created this kind of like floodable public space. But what it did in a neighborhood, suddenly your neighborhood became much greener. It became quieter because the trees absorbed the noise. It became cleaner because all of those nanoparticles were absorbed by the plants. And of course, it became cooler because those plants also absorbed the heat. And so this simple intervention of the floodable public space, more green space, transformed this neighborhood. This is the climate quarter in Copenhagen, the neighborhood completely in a very simple, actually quite cheap way. And finally, in terms of the climate, what's going on here? This is Switzerland. This is the Swiss capital, Bern. And who would believe the politicians and the bankers would spend the late afternoon walking around in their swimming costume? And they do that because in Switzerland, they're now seeing temperatures of 40 degrees in the summer with climate change. And the opportunity to jump into their river, and basically they jump into their local river in the middle of the city. And they do this because they've got little concrete steps and a red painted handle. So all you need is a concrete step, a red handle to get in and out of the water easily, and a bathing costume. But this connects you to, of course, climate change because, wow, we're swimming. It's only the end of May and we're swimming. Yeah, climate change. Or, oh, the water's cold in August. Yeah, the glacier is melting. And so by doing a relevant task, an enjoyable task, a enjoyable exercise, it connects you to the bigger aspect of climate change. And of course, also it makes this summer more bearable, more enjoyable, more fun. And that's why around the world now, we're discovering like Malmö, the Vikings, here's Copenhagen, the harbor bath. And for that vacation feeling, if you maybe can't afford to go away on holiday, the summer's getting hotter, you meet your neighbor in your swimming costume. And this is maybe, many things are happening at the same time. They cleaned up the harbor. They built this simple structure. Now you can swim in the harbor, but so much more happens. It connects people to climate, it connects people to place, it connects people to other people. You put it all together around the world, we're seeing a new way of building. And if we just think that, density can be delivered in different ways, but if we think, this one where we build lower, this is 4 pictures of the same density, but this lower one is obviously on a much more human scale. Here's the same thing in Lego. So 4 stories, 1 Lego brick, 1 Lego block is a story. If you want to build a bigger block, you have to go higher because if you want to fit the same number of blocks, and try this at home, you can make your own experiment. If you build these kind of blocks, it's 12 stories, maybe 36 stories, 20 stories. These are all the same density, but you can do it in different ways. And it doesn't need to look like this. It can be much more varied. It can start at 1, 2 stories. It can go up to 6, 7. We can create a much more varied environment. And this is what we're seeing around the world, a new vernacular architecture, human scale. It's in Sweden. It's, it's in France. It's in LA. This is a picture from Santa Monica. 5 stories, active ground floors, greenery, public transportation. You can do it in the States. This is Hamburg in Germany. This is Malmo again, and again it's Santa Monica. Here's Hamburg. Here's Copenhagen. This is the scale, a scale which creates really great microclimate. It creates good sociable spaces. It's attractive. It's fun. You could almost say it's kind of like a walk in the park. And I guess this is my last slide. Coexistence or non-coexistence, that's the question. We're facing a time of huge challenges in terms of what's happening on this planet. But actually, we can be terrified by these challenges. We can also be terrified by the social challenges of mass immigration, of the conflicts that are happening in the war. But there are ways to deal with this. There are ways to deal with this densification and diversification, these changes, which can actually be better for us, that not only healthier, but actually more enjoyable. And so I hope that's maybe the beginning of a conversation to talk about how some of the challenges we're facing might actually just be a walk in the park. Thank you, Gil. If I've got it left. So I kind of had these things like my thing was think smaller. It doesn't have to be think bigger. Malmö was a small city, 300,000. It was learning from Copenhagen. It didn't have the budget, but it did cheaper versions of things Copenhagen was doing. Simple things like the patio courtyard. Here's, during COVID, a window into the store. So the store could remain open. You can jump off your bike and it's a little window. Think lower, and the fact that lower creates value. These people who are developing say, I want to build a tower, because I want to sell the penthouse. Well, if you build a 4, 5, 6 story city, you'll have much more penthouse. Don't think about the big skyline, think about the big sky, and having these layers that you can accommodate different things. Think slower, maybe. That fact that actually it's not just about A to B, the fastest metro system. It's about actually how I accommodate every part of my life, my community. My commute starts at my window, going to the store. Those simple solutions like in, Copenhagen, how you get, the fact it's an ecosystem where shopkeeping is connected to riding your bike. And those solutions just like people have strollers and prams, baby carriages, bikes, simple things, simple solutions like balconies and arcades and little gardens that we can build our own weather, and what a cheap intervention just to add a balcony onto building. So think smaller, think lower, think simpler, think softer.
This book about Soft City, every page is a delight. Once it's beautifully designed, lots of examples, very understandable. You don't need a PhD in urban planning to understand. It's for anybody. So please go ahead and buy it.
Okay, Gil, I was going to ask, you don't need to buy the book, but please get it in your public library. That's my only wish. I don't ask you to buy it, but if you can order Soft City to your public library or to your school library, that's what I think we really appreciate. Thank you.
I love libraries and we need to strengthen the library system, but a few books is really good to have them. I would be ashamed to show you my book of Soft City because I have so many comments and underlines on everything that I love. So sometimes it's good to have that paper copy and make it very much. Thank you, everybody. And I see you 2 weeks from now, we're going to talk about how to get more people riding bicycles more often, everywhere, 4 seasons. Thanks a lot, everyone. David, take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.